Good evening. I'm Sue Flykop, a trained moderator from the League of Women Voters of Wayland. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Sharon Stoughton, welcome to today's candidate forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, and litigation at the local, state, and national levels. We are a membership organization open to all people who subscribe to its purpose and policies. The women in the name of the organization is a legacy that pays tribute to the veterans of the women's suffrage movement who were our founders over 100 years ago, and to the many women who inspire us all to make democracy work. This forum is part of our ongoing voter education efforts to help voters make informed decisions at the upcoming elections. We hope that over the course of this program, you will learn more about the state Senate candidates running to represent Norfolk, Plymouth, and Bristol. The district consists of, in Braintree, precincts 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B1, 4A, 5A, 5B, and 6B. And in Randolph, precincts 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, Milton and Stoughton in the county of Norfolk, Bridgewater and West Bridgewater in the county of Plymouth, and Easton in the county of Bristol. The Massachusetts primary is on September 3rd, 2024, and the presidential and Massachusetts general election is November 5th, 2024. And now on to the candidates forum. I'll start by explaining some of the procedures for the forum, which each candidate received beforehand. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes for an opening statement, 1.5 minutes to answer each question, and 1.5 minutes for a closing statement. The opening statements will be done in alphabetical order, and closing statements will be done in reverse alphabetical order. The questions have been compiled by the League, and every candidate will be asked the same questions. I will rotate the order of who answers a question first. The moderator, the time clock, and the candidates will be spotlighted on Zoom and always visible. The clock will change color with 15 seconds remaining. Please finish your sentence when you see the stop on the clock. If you continue speaking after the stop is visible, I will say thank you and move on to the next speaker. The question will be listed in the chat section if it's possible. Personal references about other candidates or specific people are out of order. And for the audience, this forum is being recorded. A recording will be shared with local access stations in the district. Again, for the Zoom audience, please mute yourself and remain muted. If you prefer not to be seen, please turn off your video. Okay, so regarding this race, there are 3 Democrats and no Republicans running for the office. The candidates are Aaron G. Bradley, Kathleen Krogan Kamara, and William J. Driscoll Jr. So we're going to launch right into our opening statements in alphabetical order. So Aaron, 1.5 minutes to you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I just want to thank everybody for allowing me this opportunity. The League of Women Voters is something that's near and dear to my heart. I always tell my daughter that she has the right to vote because of all the work that was done by the suffragettes. So thank you. I'm a mom. I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I'm lucky enough to live in a multi-generational home. I moved my father in during COVID, and it's been a wonderful experience. I've also been lucky enough to have multiple experiences that will help me in running for your state senator. I've served on statewide nonprofits, being the executive director for multi-agency nonprofits. I've worked in the state Senate, passing legislation from start to finish. And I currently serve in the local government here in Milton. I'm a select board member, and I'm really happy that I have the experience working on our town budgets, because I can tell you it has been really difficult for the last few years. So I understand the pain that most of our towns are going through to try and make those ends meet. One of the questions that was asked to me is, why am I running? Well, I'm running to give back. It's something that was instilled in me since I was a very young child, standing up for teacher pay from the age of 14. So this is not something new. I really want to work on housing. I'm proud to say that I'm the only candidate that voted for the MBTA Housing Committee and worked to have that passed here in Milton. I want to fight for education, and I really want to fight for our community investment. I believe I can help make these progress on these issues. And because of all this experience that I've had in my life, I believe I can start working for you on day one and seeing real progress. Thank you.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, I made the mistake. I advised you not to. Kathleen, a minute and a half to you.
Thank you for hosting. My name's Kathleen Krogan Kamara. I'm a proud Democrat running for state Senate September 3rd in the Democratic primary. I want to fix the broken healthcare system. I want to fix the broken legislature. I want to fix the broken housing system. Let me tell you what we can do. On the broken healthcare system, my daughter was in a serious car accident when she was 16. She lives in a group home. During COVID, she lost all her services, so I navigated a very convoluted, broken healthcare system. My daughter's 38, and it's still broken. I want to fix the broken legislature. It's too is very convoluted, and so much is hidden from the public. I advocate for auditing the legislature. The people want it, the legislators don't. Amid many closed-door sessions, the people push for transparency on Beacon Hill. Auditing the legislature will be on the ballot this November. I helped get the petition there. I want to fix the broken housing system. When I first started out, I was able to buy a home and live the American dream. For young people starting out, that American dream is out of reach. Seniors struggle to stay in their homes. I support the Affordable Homes Act and the MBTA Communities Act, both making the American dream possible. It's a win.
I'm afraid we're out of time, Kathleen. So thank you, and we'll have other opportunities to talk. Bill, a minute and a half to you, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the organizers of tonight's event. My name is Bill Driscoll Jr. I'm a state representative for Milton and Randolph. I live in Milton with my wife, Becca, and our two boys, Will, age 8, and Robbie, age 5. Prior to the legislature, I worked in the nonprofit sector, specifically in disaster response, helping communities around the country that were underserved, that had been affected by floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, helping them rebuild after these events. It gave me a chance to work at all levels of government, from local, state, and federal, as we navigated and finding resources to help people pick up the pieces and move on. Since 2017, I've been working on the inside of Beacon Hill. I've helped pass items that I campaigned on in 2016 in my race for rep, including paid family medical leave, climate change roadmap. We put the fair share on the ballot, and it passed, and we've been able to fund improvements to transportation and education like never before. I voted in favor of such legislation as the ROE Act, Student Opportunity Act, and a healthcare bill just last week that is aimed at regulating pharmacy benefit managers and putting money back in your pockets as savings on prescription drugs. For the last 7 years as state rep for Milton Randolph, I've been building relationships that would help me hit the ground running if elected to be our next state senator. I hope that you'll vote for me in the upcoming election, and I look forward to tonight's conversation.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen, you're gonna go first for the first question. How would your actions as senator differ from those of your predecessor?
Okay. My campaign is a grassroots campaign. I believe in talking to the people. I believe that my strongest idea is constituent services. So being a grassroots campaign, I talk to the people and get to know what they care about. I believe in transparency. I believe my life experiences with my daughter, a tragedy hitting our family. I believe, the fact that I've raised a family on my own as a single mom, raised my children while I was running my business for 20 years, beauty salon. And then I became an RN to better care for my daughter. And then I decided to run for state senate because our elected officials weren't there for me. And I have a lot of issues I'd like to work on related to healthcare. But honestly, I care about everything. So again, My campaign is a very grassroots campaign, and I thank you very much for the question.
Thank you. And Bill, the question to you next.
And it's
How would your actions as senator differ from those of your predecessor?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I think, and this is not to speak ill or lightly of Senator Timilty's service, but I think there's some clear distinctions in terms of my service as state rep so far and what I would bring as our next state senator. So I quickly moved up as a vice chair within 2 years, and then a chairperson of a joint committee on COVID-19 emergency management and preparedness. This is the first time that in 50 plus years that there's been a chairperson in this rep seat that I now currently serve in. And it's emblematic of the trust that I have of my colleagues in the State House, both in the Senate and the House, and working with leadership to address some of the toughest challenges that we're faced with, whether it's the once in a generation public health crisis like COVID-19. As a new chairperson, I was asked to provide oversight of Governor Baker and his administration. And at every point in that process, the mantra was to be constructive and productive with what we were doing. So it was never to score political points. It was to work in a nonpartisan way to find solutions for Massachusetts, for the Commonwealth, for our constituents. And I think that we delivered on that. Massachusetts continues to stand out as one of the leading states of managing through the pandemic. And I think the legislature and our committee played a big role in that, working with the administration. Again, no matter if it's a governor that's a Republican or a Democrat, it's always about being productive, constructive in the work that we're doing and working at the highest level, including with leadership.
Thank you. And Erin, the question to you.
Yes, thank you so much. First, I have to thank Senator Timilty for his years of service in the legislature, and I wish him the best on his next endeavor, giving back to the public through his public service. Some of the things your question was, how would I be different? So some of the things that I would bring to the table that would be different is that I want to actually lead with transparency. So every single vote that I take, whether it's in committee, whether it's in conference, whether it's anywhere within my realm, I will post all of that on my website so that my constituents will know exactly how I vote on every single bill that comes before me. There won't be any hide and seek of what I do. I currently serve as a select board member where every single vote that I take is on record. And so this to me is something that just should be first nature for us. And so I'm happy to say that I will be extremely transparent. The second thing is I really want to work in coalition. One of the ways that when I was up at Beacon Hill, one of the things that really worked for us to get legislation passed was to work in coalition, not just inside the building, but outside the building. So I really want to bring those partnerships in so that we can all work together to pass the best legislation that we can. This is something that I know works. I've served on a coalition with 200 different organizations, and we were able to pass legislation within a short time. And then finally, I just want to say that the other thing that I'll bring to the table that's different is I want to have regular office hours in our district, not just during the day, but at evening hours too, when I know that families need to get home and can meet with me. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. This next question is to Bill. Some of you have already mentioned transparency. So this question is asking specifically, what steps would you take to increase government transparency and accountability? And we're starting with Bill first.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think I've got a track record of this throughout the pandemic. One of the things that we made sure that we codified and have carried forward is the ability for individuals to access government at the State House. So starting with the hybrid hearings in 2020, we've now continued that on. So folks can participate remotely, both as a legislator, a staff person, or a member of the public that's interested in watching or participating in the hearings. And we're pretty proud of this work that we've continued on throughout 2020. And I filed legislation that does the same thing at the municipal level to help provide for municipalities that want to hold hybrid meetings going forward, working with the Mass Municipal Association to do just that. It's a bill that they've supported and that we hope to see pass someday and learn from that. So I think that access to these meetings is something that we continue to do well into the future. and providing for opportunities so that whether you can come in remotely and not have to take a whole day off or half day off of work to, testify for 3 minutes, that kind of thing in person. Now you can watch at home and participate from home and not have to pay for parking, take a half day of work. And so looking for other opportunities that we can build upon at the municipal and state level, I'm very interested in.
Okay, thank you. And Erin, the question to you.
Thank you so much for this question. So just to put the facts on the table, Massachusetts ranks 49th out of the 50 states for transparency. So obviously we have a lot of improvement to do. Massachusetts likes to be the first or second in everything that we do, and this is definitely an area that we can improve on. Like I said in my previous answer, I will absolutely put every single vote I take up on my website. I'm not afraid to stand by the votes I take. And so that's a very first step of how I can do actual leadership on transparency. The other thing I would like to do is make sure that when a bill comes to us, we have 48 hours to review it. I can tell you that having written, 100-page bills in my past, it's a lot to digest in less than that time. And for me, I really want to bring people in from the community that are experts in that legislation to make sure that we're hitting on all the right points. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm the only one that's really worked in coalition. It's something I learned from Senator Spilka, who's now the Senate president, when I worked for her. She taught me that if folks were having issues or trouble with legislation, that we just invite them more. We have more meetings. We have more openness. We really just open the books and listen to them. And I think that's part of the transparency that needs to happen is we need to really lay out what we want to do. We need to set out who we should invite, and then we need to invite more people because all those people have a right to see and a right to have access to what it is we're legislating on. And they're the experts. So that's why I will be doing that.
Okay, thank you. And Kathleen, the question to you.
And thank you for the question. So I want to fix the broken legislature. It too is very convoluted and so much is hidden from the public. I advocate for auditing the legislature. The people want it, the legislators not. Amid many closed-door sessions, the people push for transparency on Beacon Hill. Auditing the legislature will be on the ballot in November. I helped the petition get there. Sometimes we see our legislators at events, and honestly, as a female out socially, and I see our elected politicians standing around in a circle, slapping each other on the back. Someone like me that has children, maybe I would want to go and talk to my representative. But with that kind of demeanor, it makes it so that it's not quite as welcoming. So I do advocate for the audit. In the post-Me Too era, there was a scandal on Beacon Hill. And quite frankly, I care about young staff on Beacon Hill and who will they go to if something happens? Will they have to go to the speaker? Will they have to go to the person who something happened with? So I want to unionize, make sure that the youth on Beacon Hill are able to unionize. So activists are very
Kathleen.
upset.
Thank you, Kathleen. Kathleen, your time is up. Thank you. All right, Erin, you're going to go first with this next question. What is one policy pioneered by another state that you would like to see Massachusetts adopt?
That is an excellent question. Gosh, this is such a great question. So I had one that we already did, but New York State had done CHINS reform, which is the Children in Need of Services system. They did that reform, and we modeled our legislation again around that. So that was an incredible thing that we did. I would say that right now I'm looking to California. I'm looking to how they're dealing with their electoral races. I think one of the things that we need to take into consideration is campaign finance. So for me personally, raising this amount of money is just it's mind blowing, right? So the fact that we have to raise close to $100,000, if not more, every 2 years to do this, it just seems to me like we could be putting that money towards so many other great things. And I know California had recently worked on a piece of legislation around that, and that was really important to me, and something that I hope that we can do in our own state, so that we're not asking our neighbors and our friends for these dollars when they can go towards much more important things. That's one piece. The other thing that I would have to say that I'm really in favor of, and I believe it was New York again, but they have the act to choose your own nursing home. And so for me, as a caregiver to my uncle who lives in New York City, that was really important. They called me, they tried to figure out which would be the best place to place him. And so it's a competitive system, and they have beds. And for me, that's really important. So those are the two pieces.
Thank you. And Bill, the question to you next.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great question. Definitely had my wheels spinning in my head. I'll give you two. I think one, and coming from the West Coast, I think it's either Oregon or Washington for both of these. The first one would be a bed board, which is for coordinating in the healthcare space. We've all seen the immense pressure that is on our hospitals, our secondary care facilities, our nursing homes, whether it's a community hospital or a world-renowned hospital in Boston. People working in these facilities are stressed because the capacity is stressed to the max. There's a thing called a bed board, which would provide a data visualization of the thresholds of hospitals in terms of patients and care. And when it gets too high, the coordination call is triggered. The experts get on a phone and they figure out who can take what patients where to relieve some of that pressure, so that we make sure that our loved ones are always getting the quality care that they come to expect from Massachusetts hospitals. The other is around starting carbon pricing to help combat climate change and produce revenue where we can help build infrastructure and provide funds to our cities and towns and regional governments to build the clean energy projects that we really need to adapt to a rise in temperature, a rise in extreme heat, a rise in extreme rainfall events. And right now, we can generate that revenue by putting a price on carbon and going after our biggest polluters for using fossil fuels.
Okay, thank you. And Kathleen, the question to you.
Hi, thank you. I would like to talk about, I think that's an important question to find out what other states are doing. So I would like to talk about Steward Healthcare coming into Massachusetts and rescuing the Catholic hospitals in the 1980s. And, the fact that we didn't have the legal tools to hold them accountable. And now, they're kind of running off. They filed bankruptcy and a lot of hospitals are closing. And I am very concerned with our legal system and how it affects and how it relates to healthcare. The fact that we didn't regulate it back then is concerning to me. I see that we are working on laws to help this from, happening again. But I wonder where our health policy writers are, and they could have really contributed to keeping people safe from that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Kathleen, you're going to go first with our next question. Do you support election day voter registration?
I'm sorry.
Why or why not?
No. Sorry.
Okay. Do you support election day voter registration? Why or why not?
Oh, absolutely. Anything that makes voting easier and gets more people out to the polls is great as far as I'm concerned. I support all measures to make voting easier, to make registration easier, and to encourage all people in the voting process. I support easier voting on equity grounds. It's always the marginalized members of society who vote less whenever there are restrictions.
Great. Thank you. And Erin, the question to you.
Absolutely. So the easy answer is yes, I absolutely support this. I am a mom of two young children. My daughter is 21, and she tells me every single time that I tell her she has to vote, that we vote too much, that there's way too many elections. So my thing is if we can rope in these younger adults right now at a time, like my son's 15, if we can rope him into voting in one of these elections, we've got him. So if I can get him to come down and register to vote on the day that we are voting for, let's say, the first female African-American president, that would be amazing. I mean, if he was 18, but that would be amazing to do, right? So if we can actually engage our younger folks to come out and vote for those types of things, we can actually get a hold of them and talk to them about how this is a wonderful civic duty, because their votes make the difference in our future, right? So for me, if same day registration, same day voting is 100% up my alley. My daughter would like for there to be less elections that we have to do, but we are a proud family of voting in every single election that comes our way. And so I applaud this effort and hope that we can pass it in the state.
Thank you. And Bill, the question to you.
Thank you. Yes, I do support same day registration. I've actually voted on an amendment a few years ago when we were doing an election laws bill. Unfortunately, the amendment didn't pass, but the room was pretty split on this. There was actually a lot of support, but not quite enough to get it through to look at same day. But I proudly supported that. And one of the reasons I was so steadfast in supporting this in the past and have a history of this is because really after January 6th and what we saw happen at the U.S. Capitol, I think as a public official, particularly as a Democrat in a Democratic state, we cannot stand in way of anything that would possibly impede someone's right to vote. I think we're in different times now, having seen that occur on January 6th, and this is really about engaging democracy. With that said, at the same time, I know that this issue gives our town clerks a lot more work to do, a lot of anxiety around it, and so if and when we're going to pass this, I want to make sure that we fund it so that it's not an unfunded mandate and that we can get it done, because I think it's a fundamental right to vote in the United States. We can do that, and we can pay for it too. Find a way to make it happen. Make sure that they have the staff support at the county clerk level, at the town clerk level, and the Secretary of State's office to get this done. So I would absolutely support it.
Okay, thank you. Bill, you're going to go first with this next question. What should the legislature do to increase the supply of affordable and middle market housing in Massachusetts?
It's a great question. I think that we just passed a housing bond bill just last week that we're all really proud of. And incentivizing transit-oriented housing is going to be the way of the future, workforce housing in particular. We're hearing again and again on the campaign trail about the cost of living in Massachusetts. We've all seen the statistics in terms of people either leaving the state or thinking seriously about leaving the state, either for a while they go and kind of get their bank accounts up in other states, or possibly for good. And that's not good. We've got some of the best healthcare in the world, some of the best universities in the world here in Massachusetts, certainly the public education system, having been the first in the country and always continuing being at the top. We want to keep our homegrown folks here and thriving and being an inviting environment for others to come into the state to work, whether it's in the biopharma industry or somewhere else at an entry-level job with a career path to lift themselves up toward the American dream. So it's really transit-oriented housing in terms of making sure that we're not putting more cars on the roads, and making sure that our public transit system is continually being improved upon and built up, because we need to be able to support that growth if we're going to build more units and get people into good paying jobs throughout the region. So it's really that transit-oriented housing piece, incentivizing that with state level grants and other ways to make sure that this development is happening in a responsible way, but one way that keeps kids here for the future.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen, the question to you next.
Hi, thank you. So we have the Affordable Homes Act, or the Housing Bond Bill, and the MBTA Communities Act, which contributes to the American dream. Everyone deserves a roof over their head. So the mission is for the MBTA communities law is high density housing within half a mile of transit lines. This will benefit young families, 3 bedrooms, get cars off the road. It's great for our climate goals. Lots of towns have outdated zonings. God bless the zoning boards because they're doing a lot of really hard work. Towns had to come up with deadlines. In December of last year, Braintree is in compliance, Milton is not. Even though both my challengers are from Milton, they did not contribute positively to get Milton to comply. Milton has been resistant for decades in their exclusionary zoning. We want to green our public transit, and we want to work towards our American dream. We want to support our seniors. Seniors can't seem to stay in their homes. We have within the Affordable Homes Act, ADUs, accessible dwelling units, and this would greatly help our seniors. We want to really do everything we can to put roofs over heads. Is a real crisis right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Erin, the question to you.
Thank you so much. So every day when I go out into the district, every single thing I hear is that this is a crisis. So we have a real housing crisis on our hands right now. I want to speak to a few things. One, the housing bond bill. The housing bond bill compromise was a different bill than was originally outlined in both the House and the Senate. And I encourage everybody on this call and who's watching this to go back and look at how the House and the Senate and our representatives voted for that specific bill before it became a conference committee bill that they voted on. The second thing is that I'm the only candidate here who has voted in favor of the MBTA Communities Act on a local level. To categorize me as not being for the MBTA Act is quite honestly laughable. I am in the Boston Herald with the yes signs. I tried my hardest and I worked very hard to try and get Milton to comply with the law, something that I believe is really important. It's important to comply with the laws of the Constitution of the Commonwealth, but it's also important to work on behalf of our legislature who passed this. So those are two big things that I just want to point out before I answer this question. The things that I think we need to do, I currently work with seniors. I work with seniors in their homes to try and keep them in their home communities. I can tell you they want to downsize. We need to build more housing so that they can move to smaller, more realistic housing for them and for younger adults to set up roots in their community. We need to expand the first-time homebuyers Act.
So, Erin, you're out of time, but I just want to encourage the candidates to focus on their
Can't hear you.
positions and not to characterize encourage all the candidates. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
To focus on your own positions and not on your candidates. I know you were, but I think we need to do another round, another 30-second round to give everyone a chance to respond or discuss. So I think, Erin, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think we should go back to the same order. And Bill, I want to give you 30 seconds if you want to respond to that, to that statement. So, I'm not sure if the timekeeper has a 30-second one, but I will keep time myself. It's up to you if you want to say anything, Bill.
I'll be fast. No, I appreciate the opportunity. I think it's important to note that I did in fact vote for what's known as the MBTA Communities Act as a state representative in the legislature, which would make transit communities served by the MBTA. They have to create a reasonable size zone within a half mile of a ferry terminal, bus station, subway station. And so I did, in fact, actually voted that to send it to the towns to comply and to be part of that zoning.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was doing my own timer here just in case. Kathleen, 30 seconds to you.
So on that topic, I just wanted to say that Milton is suing, so they're not in compliance. And they've been pushing back on, housing for decades. This is nothing new. I did a listening tour the beginning of this year in East Milton, actually. And, East Milton was very upset that they were saying that everything seems to get dumped on them. So the other thing that they said was they wanted their leaders to come forward and interact with them. So I really feel that before things implode upon themselves.
Oh, okay, your time is up, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Erin, 30 seconds to you.
Thank you so much. I've already mostly explained this, but Milton is not suing. We are being sued by the Attorney General because we're not in compliance with the law, something that I fought for my entire time on the select board. Mr. Driscoll is correct. He did vote for it in the legislature. I voted for it on the local level here on the select board, and I fought to make sure that it was actually worked here in our town. Well, this is one small piece of what can fix our housing. What we really need to do is build. And so I think while we can get mired in this, that's not the end all be all.
Okay, thank you. Erin, you're going to go first on this next question.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. What measures would you support to deal with the needs of immigrants coming to Massachusetts?
Yes. So thank you for this question. This is also, you're just batting 1,000 with these easy questions tonight. So this is also a tough one. I want to start by saying immigrants are human. And we need to treat them and everybody else with respect and with dignity, no matter where they are on their journey. So I just want to start with that because I think that's a really good place. If we all come from that place of general understanding, we can actually make things better. I think this is a more federal government issue because I think our federal policy around immigration is broken. And so while I will support, our administration and I will support those that are coming into our state because we are a right to shelter state, I really think the federal government needs to take a look at this. And I really think that they are the ones that need to work to fix this. But on the opposite end, we are dealing with the largest impact of this, right? On the local communities. So our hotels are overflowing. Our schools are about to be overflowing. And while they are going to pay for the schools, what we haven't figured out is how do you pay for the transportation? So if kids start a school in Stoughton, let's say, and then move to Lawrence, the Stoughton school system has to transport them to Lawrence until they are actually transferred there. Who's going to pay for that? Because I'm here to tell you, as somebody who's worked on our budget, we cannot afford this. We cannot afford to do this for the next year or two. We will not be able to make ends meet. But this is really something we need to talk to our administration about and the federal representatives that we have.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen, the question to you.
Hi, I do agree. I do believe this is a federal issue. However, we are very impacted. I talk to people every day. I knock doors and we have these conversations. I know President Biden did work on this and Trump turned down a bipartisan bill. Kamala Harris went down to South America and she said, don't come here. Don't come here. I think, there's so much violence in South America. There's corruption and violence. And I would advocate for, immediate increase in, border staff to keep everybody safe there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bill, the question to you.
Thank you very much. I actually have a track record on this issue publicly. I was the first legislator to constructively and respectfully criticize the Healy administration on the handling of the humanitarian arrivals and immigrant crisis. I was also in contact with our federal delegation from the Senate and the Congress to impress upon them what was ahead of us. And I think this is an example of my kind of leadership, both behind the scenes and out in front in the press, in terms of being a forward-thinking leader, a thoughtful leader. The Healy administration has implemented some of the things that I first wrote to them about a year ago. And the federal delegation is obviously well aware of the issue now. This is a coordination issue. If the federal government's not willing to change border policy, at the very least, there needs to be coordination of inbound immigrants and humanitarian arrivals. Massachusetts is punching above its weight, so to speak. We're being asked to do so much more. We're consistently in the top 5 or 10 states to deal with this issue because Massachusetts is such a great place to live with so many good social programs, public education, healthcare. It's no wonder people want to come here, but the feds really need to step up. I've been on top of them to do that. I'm hopeful that we will find a way out of this. It's frankly going to take a couple of years, but we're already starting to see benefits to some of the changes that we have made in the programming. We do have a long way to go on this.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen, you're going to go first on this next question. Should the state education funding formula be revised as more cities and towns face Proposition 2.5 override votes to fund schools? And if so, if it should be revised, how should it be revised?
Yes, I do think the funding formula should be revised. I think it's a bottom. It's not a ceiling. I want to make sure to keep a lot of our good teachers. We're having to eliminate a lot of things in schools that we need. Here in Randolph, where I live, we have some really unique needs. We have the language barrier and a lot of people that are suffering from trauma. And it's very hard for our community. So, our needs are very different from a lot of other communities. And so I want to do everything possible to support our schools. I do believe that, supporting better schools makes for better communities.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bill, the question to you next.
So better supporting our schools is something that I always have an eye on. When the governor filed her budget earlier this year, she had about a $60 range per pupil payment per day for the school districts. I had an amendment teed up, ready to go at over $100, and we actually adopted in the budget $104 per pupil. And this is an example of, I think that we should be fully funding our public schools. I'm proud of the vote that I took a few years ago for the Student Opportunity Act. When I first came into office as the state representative, where I serve now for Milton and Randolph, one of Randolph's biggest challenges was the amount of money that it was assessed and lost every year, so to speak, toward charter school payment. And the Student Opportunity Act rectified this, and we're now funding charter school reimbursement at 100%. With the difference between 2019 and 2024, in that the funding formulas that we put in place is the cost of inflation and the cost of doing business. And so what's really imperative for the next seated state senator, which I hope to be with your vote on September 3rd, the day after Labor Day, is we need to figure out a way to index this or to deal with inflation for our communities. You're seeing a lot of communities go to operational overrides. You're going to see more. And this is one of the key drivers of cost. We absolutely have to fully fund our public schools, and we're going to have to find a way to do that with better state funding and potentially indexing for inflation.
Okay, thank you. And Erin, the question to you.
Thank you so much for this. So I'm happy to say that I am a proud working mom who earned her comeuppance in public education. Both of my kids are public educated children, and my daughter is striving at her college right now. So I just want to thank all the teachers out there who are doing the hard work when there are so many restrictions and so many demands placed on them. So thank you for that. Your question was how would I change that funding, right? So I'm happy to say that just today I received the American Federation of Teachers endorsement because I want to work together with them to actually make that change. So if we had tied Chapter 70, which is your school funding mechanism, to inflation, today alone, this year, we'd get $437 million more dollars for our cities and towns. Right? That's what we need, because we can look at Braintree, who just did an override specifically for their schools. Look at Milton, who specifically will need to do that override. Look at Stoughton, who just had to do a school building override that failed. I mean, these are important things. This is the cornerstone of why we live in Massachusetts, is because of our educational system. So working with the American Federation of Teachers, I not only want to increase funding, I want to make sure that every child gets a world-class education. I want to help to close that achievement gap. And really, what's really going to matter, I want to try and close that class size. I want to reduce it so that our students get the teaching that they need from day one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bill, you're going to go first on this next question. How should Massachusetts avoid jeopardizing healthcare access and prevent a situation like Steward Healthcare?
Well, we can start by making sure that for-profit companies can't sell the land out from underneath the healthcare facilities like Steward has in this process. I think that Steward was too big of a player with too many properties. And I know that this is going to be, a huge focus of the next legislative session in analyzing exactly what went wrong. So I think we still have lessons to learn because we're in the middle of this crisis, so to speak, as the handoff, hopefully, with these facilities happens before they are closed by Steward. And we need to address this. I think the approach right now is appropriate in terms of we don't want to put ourselves in a position where this can go to court and get tied up for a decade in court. We need to hold Steward accountable for what they've done, but also make sure that the continuity of care exists. And so there's some hard lessons being learned right now at Department of Public Health and the regulating agencies for hospitals. And I think that moving away from allowing for-profit entities to take such a stake in delivering community health care and across so many places in the Commonwealth, I think is going to be really, really looked at. Healthcare in Massachusetts belongs in the nonprofit sector and not someplace that, hedge funds and investors can try and take money out of for their own doing.
Okay, thank you. Erin, the same question to you. You're on.
Yeah, sorry. So I believe that we could ask you to repeat the question. Is that correct?
Yes, of course.
Can you repeat the question before my time starts? I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks. How should Massachusetts avoid jeopardizing healthcare access and prevent a situation like Steward Healthcare?
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. I just wanted to clarify and make sure I had it correctly. So I think the Steward Healthcare crisis is something that was raised to the legislature and raised to the administration years before it actually happened. And I think that there was this nonchalantness around it. Because what really ended up happening is that it's going to impact our community hospitals. So for this district, for example, we lost Norwood, we lost Quincy. So we've got Milton Hospital and we've got Kearney up the street. So when folks can't get to the Kearney, which is going to happen in the next month, where are they going to go? They're going to go to Milton Hospital. And that's just going to create a bigger strain on our community hospitals. I really think that we as a legislature, we as an entire Commonwealth need to start looking at how our community hospitals are intricate to our daily lives and how we need to spread that so that we make sure that our residents don't have to travel 30 minutes when they're having an asthma attack or travel an hour when in rush hour traffic, when they're having a heart attack. These are things that are real things that are going to happen to our folks. And I'm really happy to say that I'll be working with the Massachusetts Nurses Association, who recently also endorsed me to work on that front and work on ensuring that our healthcare professionals are in a setting where they can help those in our community, because really that's what they want to do. And that's what we should be doing for our residents of our district. I'm done.
Thank you. Kathleen, 90 seconds to you.
Hi, thank you. So healthcare is broken, like I had mentioned before. Healthcare impacts the most vulnerable of our community, too. I want to bring up the topic of equity and Black maternal healthcare. I'd like to really emphasize research on drugs that affect the Black community, sickle cell anemia and Black maternal morbidity during childbirth. We have group homes that need work on educating and supervision, and the PCAs and the certified nurses assistant and the nurses being more empowered. And now we, have a model of healthcare called adult foster care that has a potential for being unsupported and unsupervised as well. So I advocate for mass care. I testified before the healthcare committee on Beacon Hill in advocacy of single payer mass care, which would eliminate premiums, copays, deductibles. I also want to work on making it so that DDS, Department of Developmental Services, and DPPC, the protective agencies, and the group homes has less of a cozy relationship. I'm actually right now working with State Auditor Diana DiZoglio and the Disability Law Center on just that thing. I am a union nurse.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. Your time is up.
Thank you.
All right, Erin, you're going to go to the next question. You'll be first. What action should the legislature take to address the climate emergency?
Thank you for this question. It's a really important one, and one that I must say is hitting this generation harder than it's ever hit me. I grew up about a while ago, let's just say, and it was not on the top of our minds as it is today. My kids come home all the time and talk to me about recycling. So it's a really big issue that we have to deal with. Right now, there's a bill in front of the legislature that they could have passed before the end of this session that would really make an impact on emissions. And unfortunately, they haven't done that. So I am really imploring them to come back to the table to do their job and to do their work to pass that legislation to actually start making an impact. There's a couple other things that can happen. We can invest in renewable energy. That's a great piece, right? Why are we not investing more in that? Why are we not giving a higher carbon tax to those corporations that are currently smogging up our skies? If we were just to do that, if we were just to increase that carbon tax, we could actually turn that around and make it work to help eliminate climate change in our region. I want to work together with the administration, who has put together a really comprehensive omnibus bill to make this happen by 2030. I want to work with them to try and reduce those carbon emissions. I want us to invest in ways that we can start really seeing an impact on a local level. And I want to make sure that our residents actually have access to help do this reduction of climate emissions at their homes. So let's start doing that. Let's start at our cornerstone, our homes.
Okay, thank you. Bill, the question's to you next.
Yeah, I think that each of us can take steps as individuals in our households, and also as the next state senator, I hope to keep working on this issue. I'm a leader on this issue. Personally, I drive an electric car. I'm on my second one. We do home composting at home. Our waste has been cut in more than half. In the legislature, I'm happy to hear that my friends on the call support price on carbon and generating revenue. I filed that bill. It's called the Green Future Act. It's an omnibus bill that we're aimed at putting a price on the highest polluters of carbon that would generate revenue and support not only every Commonwealth community with funding, but specifically 60% of that funding would go to environmental justice communities like Randolph and Brockton nearby, and others that have been impacted in an inequitable way over the years through environmental hazards. And some of the things that, while we're still aiming to pass them and haven't gotten through, I'm happy to say that another bill I filed around creating a clean heat standard, which would incentivize our move away from fossil fuels and starting to use heat pumps and mini splits, if you're familiar. So we're relying on the energy grid as a source of energy to heat and cool our homes in the future. The Healy administration's actually put that forward. It's begun to be implemented. So working within the system, and when we can't get things passed, sometimes working with the administration to get things done through executive order works as well. So I'm happy to be a real big part of that.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen, the question's to you next.
Hi, thanks. So Massachusetts is on track to meet its near-term climate goals, but the hardest work lies ahead. To replace fossil-fueled vehicles and heating systems, we need to use nature-based solutions to sequester and store as much carbon as possible. We need to electrify 50% of our school bus fleets and commuter rail, and need to electrify our public transit. I want to say that I think the awareness in the public has really accelerated lately, which I'm really happy about. We need to work to obtain more funding because we need to meet our 2030 and 2050 goals. Decarbonizing our building sector is one of our biggest challenges. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen, you're going to go next. First on our next, actually, this is our last question. What are your priorities for dealing with transportation statewide and in your district?
Well, in my town of Randolph, I worked towards the shuttle van, a petition. And I got people to sign on, and we appear to be getting transportation for individuals living in apartments, and it's too far away to buses and public transits. And, you know, it's like I say, it's usually the more vulnerable that are impacted. And so I would like to see us electrify our transit. And we have a long way to go because, you know, the T is just broken. And I want to work towards all these goals. And I believe that I will be really working well with people on Beacon Hill. I'm a great listener, but I do speak truth to power. And when I did run for state senate in 2020, I got 7,000 people to vote for me. And then I turned around and ran for state committee woman and got 9,000 people to vote for me. So with the people's support, I can win this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Erin, the questions to you.
Thank you so much. And this ties in so nicely with your previous question, Susan, about climate change, because it really is something that we need to tackle hand in hand. We need to work to have transportation options for those in our community, specifically this district, which does not have a lot of access to the MBTA or any of that public transportation. So, you know, like the previous speaker was saying, in the town of Randolph, they just recently did a study where more than half of the people that live in that town are not within a mile of public transportation, right? So that's a big issue. We need to make sure that we are expanding our public transportation. We need to make sure that it's accessible to those that are riding, that want to ride it. And we need to make sure that when they ride it, it is actually helping our environment and not hurting it more. I mean, we've all driven behind those buses where big clouds of black smoke come out, right? And we don't want to do that anymore because we all know that that's not a good thing for our environment. We need to also work on our infrastructure. We need to work on our roads and bridges. These are the backbones of our community here in Massachusetts. And so we need to make sure that those roads and bridges are actually up to the standard so that it doesn't do the wear and tear on our cars. It doesn't create more harm. So those are some of the things that I want to work towards. And then finally, I really think that this needs to be tackled on multiple fronts. For example, my dad, who moved in with me, he gave up his driver's license, but there's nowhere for him in my house to get public transportation. We need to expand the Lyft program for our seniors so that they can get to the appointments they need. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Bill.
So, transportation priority statewide and in the district. So I've got a strong track record on this that people can look up, and I encourage them to. I helped secure $118 million commitment from the MBTA to invest in the Mattapan high-speed line, which the work has begun on, and over the next decade, there'll be new vehicles and all new stations delivered on that line. So working with my colleagues in the House and the Senate, and with the MBTA and mass transportation, we're making sure that service continues to be improved upon in the future. I'm all in on expanding rail. We go away February school vacation week down to New York a lot of the time the last few years. And I'm amazed at what New York and New Jersey can do in terms of the access to light rail and the access to regional rail. We absolutely can do this in terms of east-west or west-east, whatever your preference is. And expanding the ability to live outside of greater Boston area or southeastern Massachusetts. So working with communities that want to expand their access to rail, to bus service. I definitely subscribe to the fact that if a bus service was more reliable, more consistent, more routes on the schedule, that more people would use it. And so I think we've got to test that theory. We've got to invest in it for at least 5 years and encourage people to use it, because I think it's we got to get cars off the road. It's the answer to a lot of the congestion issues that we have. And there's a lot of good plans. We just have to prioritize and figure out which ones to fund and in what order. I'm happy to be a part of that solution.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for answering all those questions. And we're just going to be a little bit out over 7 o'clock, after 7 o'clock. But we are ready for closing statements, and we're going to do those in the reverse order that we started. So, Bill, you are going first. A minute and a half to you.
Thank you very much. In my work as state representative for the last 7 years, I've continually been called upon by my colleagues in the House and leadership to work through difficult situations, whether it's the once in a generation pandemic or trying to find solutions in the way forward with the migrant crisis. I've done this in a nonpartisan way, whether it's a Democrat or a governor in the corner office. And it's why in this race, I've earned the support of a number of organizations, including the Iron Workers Local 7, Sheet Metal Workers Local 17, New Politics, which is a group that supports candidates that have a national service background. I previously was in AmeriCorps years ago, Massachusetts Voters for Animals, and Mass Retirees PAC. In closing, let me say this. And prior to my work in the legislature, I worked in the nonprofit sector. And if past this prologue, let me tell you my story in 30 seconds, which is I began as an unknown, untrained volunteer, unaffiliated, went down to Hurricane Katrina, intended to stay for 2 weeks and stayed for 2 years. I worked myself into leadership roles and fell into a career for a decade, traveled the country helping communities recover from natural disasters, to the point where that person who showed up unknown ended up leading the association of all disaster nonprofits in the country. I'm right where I need to be in the legislature. I want to be your next state senator and move right across the hall and represent our district. And I hope that you'll vote for me the day after Labor Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Kathleen, closing statement.
Hi. So I respect my challengers' long Beacon Hill insider experience, but that makes them the establishment. There's a big job to do on Beacon Hill, and I'm no stranger to challenges. I offer a fresh new perspective with lived experiences that makes me the best choice for this seat.
Thank you. And Erin, closing statement.
Thank you so much. And thank you again, Susan, tonight for moderating to the League of Women Voters. I truly appreciate this platform to talk about these issues. I've spent my entire life working to give back. That's who I am. Whether it was when I was at the Somerville Homeless Coalition and I worked to try and help homeless folks, whether it was at the Children's League of Massachusetts, where I helped to reduce the school to prison pipeline, I have been trying to give back from day one. When I worked for Senator Spilka, we did bills we did numerous bills. The most important one, though, to me, is the one where we changed the Department of Mental Retardation to the Department of Developmental Disabilities. That, to me, has the biggest impact of those that we serve. And that's what I want to do for you. I want to make sure that you have a voice on Beacon Hill. It's the people's house. It's not my house. It's not anybody else's house. It's the people's house. So I invite everybody in my district to come on up in January when I'm elected state senator, because that's what I want to do. I want to create that pipeline from the district to the State House to make sure that your voice is being heard. And I'm that champion for you. I lost my clock, so I don't know where I am on the time.
Yes, I think you're pretty close to the end.
Okay, but I'm just going to say, I hope that I can earn your vote on September 3rd, the day after Labor Day. And if you would like to learn more about me, which I hope you do, my website is erinforstatesenate.com. Thank you all so much tonight.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to thank you all for participating in our democratic process and in putting yourself forward and making a big effort. So just to remind our voters, our candidates are Erin Bradley, Kathleen Krogan Kamara, and William Driscoll Jr. Please visit your town clerk's website for more information on the election day. The last day to register to vote for the state primary is August 24th, 2024. We hope you found this candidate forum informative. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Sharon Stoughton, thank you all for attending and want to encourage you to check out the League of Women Voters at lwvma.org at the state level and LWVUS for the national one. Thank you very much and good night.